Okay, Jason, we're live and recording.
Very good. Thank you, Fred. Good evening. My name is Jason Perot, Chairman, and I call to order this Tuesday, September 14th, 2021 meeting of the Northborough Groundwater Advisory Committee. This open meeting of the Groundwater Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of June 16, 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Groundwater Advisory Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order allows the Groundwater Advisory Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to the Northborough Remote Meetings section on YouTube. You can access that either through the town website or by the link that's posted at the top of our agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. I'd like to now confirm access of the participants who will be here throughout the meeting. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Planning Board member Anthony Zeiton.
Here.
Board of Health member Teresa Capabianco.
Present.
Conservation Commission member Diane Goldner.
Here.
And Water and Sewer Commissioner member Bryant Furman.
Present.
Additionally, we have Town Engineer Fred Litchfield.
Here.
And we also have the services of Planning Department member, staff member Melanie Rich to record in our meeting minutes. Just to review the conduct of the meeting, as chair, I will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And each vote taken by the board, the committee, I should say, will be conducted by roll call vote. We don't have any public comment. I think that is pretty much the entirety of the remote meeting procedure. Just first off, I'd like to welcome Planning Board member Anthony Zeiton to the Groundwater Advisory Committee. The Planning Board recently, at one of their meetings, reassigned members among the different liaisons or participants they have, and Anthony is now our Planning Board member. So welcome, Anthony.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
With that, we can begin with the first agenda item, which is to consider the petition of David and Christina Mofford for a variance for installation of an in-ground pool on the property located at 313 Brigham Street, map 93, parcel 29, in the residential C zoning district and groundwater overlay district area 1. Applicant Christina and David Mofford representing themselves. Hello, we can see you. If you'd like to unmute, please.
Mr. Chair, before you start.
Yes, Teresa.
I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing.
Very well, that's right. Yep.
So I don't know, I haven't done this, so I don't know, do I just take myself off screen and mute, or what should I be doing at this point?
It's up to you. You can stay and watch. You can offer comments as a resident if you choose to. You just can't vote at the end when they decide to vote their recommendation. That's my understanding of the rules.
Okay.
My recommendation, Teresa, would be to maybe mute your video.
Okay.
For the duration of this segment of the agenda.
Sure, and I'll just listen, and when the board is finished with this, I'll come back on.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, let's proceed. We have the application. This is an application that is going before the, this is going to the Zoning Board of Appeals, I believe,
Yes.
Yes.
requesting variance to allow for the installation of an in-ground pool. Yeah. Fred, do you want to just walk us over the quick summary of the situation?
Sure. The site that the Garbarinos live at is 313 Brigham Street. That particular property was granted a variance to allow a lot less than the required 80,000 square feet in area 1 to be created. And one of the conditions that was put on the property was that 100% of impervious cover on the site be recharged. And the truth of it is that you just can't recharge a pool. Kind of defeats the purpose. So they're looking to see if the board would be considering recommending approval of another variance or amendment to that condition or something to that effect that would allow them to install a pool and add some impervious cover that could not be recharged or infiltrated.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Just to review, so it's clear what this committee is doing. This Groundwater Advisory Committee is exactly that, an advisory committee. We are not the permit granting authority. So we review the aspects of the proposal that pertain to groundwater protection. And then we will be making a recommendation to the permit granting authority, in this case, the Zoning Board of Appeals, typically to recommend conditions that might have to be applied in order to ensure the satisfaction of the protection of groundwater pursuant to the bylaw. Whether or not the permit granting authority chooses to approve the request or not is entirely up to that authority. They'll have our recommendation, but in addition to the groundwater aspects, there may be other aspects of the bylaws for the variance that you're seeking, which will influence what their ultimate decision will be. We have the application in front of us. We have the narrative that describes some of the history in the partitioning of the lot to create the lot that you are on. And my understanding is that your lot is approximately 56,000 square feet, where typically the minimum lot in this groundwater district would be 80,000 square feet. That was already approved by variance, I believe. Is that correct, Fred? By the Zoning Board of Appeals at a prior request?
Yes.
So there are probably a few questions. Well, actually, Fred, perhaps what you could do next is kind of walk us through your memo that reviews some of the aspects of this and some of the observations that you have with respect to the technical details of this proposal.
Sure, I'd be happy to walk through the memo. I did send it to the Gabarinos. I do believe that they've received it. They acknowledge that. I did review the application. The lot, as you indicated, is 53,567 square feet rather than the minimum of 80,000 in the zone, which was created through the use of a variance. The parcel was originally denied a variance to subdivide a larger lot into two smaller in ZBA case number 1608, as the lot did not exist prior to the adoption of the zoning bylaw. The person who owned the property broke it into two lots, one of which didn't meet the 80,000, and he asked for a variance at that time and he was denied. He then went back and did some research and came back with bringing to our attention that there was a state statute that allowed a lot to be created that was, I believe it was, if there was a structure on there that was 100 years old, then they were entitled to create a lot, even if it didn't meet zoning because of the length of the time the structure had been there, or the two structures. So the applicant did put the two lots back together, create one conforming lot and one non-conforming lot, that being this property here, 313 Brigham Street, with the 56,000 square foot area, and he was granted a variance under that statute. Currently, the applicant is proposing a pool with a patio, an accessory structure, and a pavilion without installing a roof over the pool, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a pool. There's no way to recharge the area directly above the pool. The applicant is proposing that if a variance was granted, they'd be willing to recharge the surface area around the pool, gather that water, slope it appropriately, and put it into a recharge system, thus recharging as much as they could without the pool, but that would require a variance or an amendment to the existing variance. My memo, I indicated that in the event that the variance is recommended for approval by the committee, I would recommend a minimum that all impervious area around the pool be required to recharge, and a plan be prepared by a professional engineer with the appropriate recharge calculations as was done in the past. I'd also recommend an as-built plan that we could then have to verify everything was done in accordance with whatever plan ultimately gets approved. And then I'd also recommend that the condition that all impervious cover on the lot be recharged remain, so that any future impervious cover would also be recharged, and another shed or a tennis court or whatever it is that they might want to do. But if they wanted to put in a second pool, we would run into a problem. So as you know, variances are not given lightly, and they do set a precedent. So it's something that you need to consider very carefully before recommending. Ultimately, the ZBA, as you indicated, will be the ones making the decision. But there's not too much more in the application other than, you know, a lot of background information, the maps, information that you all have or have had before this. But I think it'd be a good time for the applicants to present their case, and maybe we have a fruitful discussion at this point.
Very good. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that. And so the applicant, would you like to speak and present your proposal?
Yes, thank you. If you don't mind, I did prepare like a full statement, and some of it is going to be repeating what Fred so eloquently already said, but it's actually helpful for me to just read through it rather than try to tease out what makes sense at this point.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
If possible, after the meeting, perhaps you could, is it really entirely within the submission that we already have in hand, or is this a separate statement?
It's largely related, but there are, I can't remember, to be honest. I mean, I think I added some stuff, took out others. Right.
Perhaps for part of the record, if you could submit a copy after the meeting, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I will start by introducing myself and my family. My name is Christy Mofford. I work as a psychiatric nurse practitioner at a group practice located in the Metro West community. My husband, Dave, is a scientist and works at a local biotech company. We have 2 children, Cameron, who is 6, and Kaylee, who is 4. We are here to apply for a zoning variance to install an in-ground swimming pool on the property of 313 Brigham Street, which we purchased as new construction in 2019. Our lot is around 56,000 square feet in size and located in Zone Residential C of Northborough's GIS zoning map. It is also in Area 1 of the Groundwater Protection Overlay District. This is the most restrictive area due to its proximity to one of the town's wells. There are 4 separate sections of Area 1 across town, but our segment is the largest and includes the most residential properties. For a visual, please see page 14 of your handout. In Area 1, the size of any residential property created after 1986, when the overlay district was established, must be a minimum of, quote, 80,000 square feet in area, such that the increase in post-development net runoff volume shall not exceed existing conditions by more than 15%. Properties in Zone RC that are not in the Groundwater Protection Overlay District have only a minimum lot requirement of 20,000 square feet without the need for recharge. In 2016, the lot at 313 Brigham Street was created through a ZBA variance, which divided a larger existing property into 2 smaller lots. Our lot at 313, which is just over 56,000 square feet, and our neighbors, the Patel's lot at 307, which is exactly 80,000 square feet. The variance was needed for our lot because it did not meet the standards as set forth by the present bylaws, which require the minimum of 80,000 square feet. When this variance was granted, it was with the requirement that any impervious surfaces would need to be recharged 100%. This means that any rainwater which falls upon the house or pavement of the property must be collected and deposited into the ground. As you can see on the attached as-built on pages 7 and 8 of your handout, all runoff from the house and driveway is captured and directed back into the ground using a dry well system. There are drains and downspouts around the perimeter of the roof and a swale along the driveway. In assessing our specific section of Area 1 of the Groundwater Protection Overlay District, using Google Maps and Zillow, we were able to identify a total of 45 properties that have a swimming pool, the vast majority of which are in-ground pools with surrounding patios. 41 of these properties are less than 3/4 of an acre, and 28 of those 41 properties are actually less than half an acre. Our property at 313 Brigham Street is 1.3 acres. It is our understanding that these other properties pre-exist the creation of the Groundwater Overlay District in 1986. When we purchased this property, there was no disclosure made regarding its location in the Groundwater Overlay District. Zoning on MLS was simply indicated as residential. Upon our very first visit to the property, we inquired about whether a pool could be installed in the backyard. This was a must-have on our home buying checklist. I grew up with a pool, and this has always served as a central gathering place for our family and friends, and remains so even today. We wanted to offer the same experience to our children growing up. The builders and their realtor assured us that a pool could be installed as long as the appropriate setbacks relating to the septic system and property lines were met. Their plans for the house had already actually included a door off the first floor bathroom leading to the backyard for this purpose. After moving in between August 2019 and April 2020, we spoke with the Northborough Building Department about the installation of a pool on our property on 3 separate occasions, twice by email and once by phone. We were advised of the Groundwater Protection Overlay Districting and informed of the need for a second variance through the ZBA. Through these conversations, it was our sense that this approval process was necessary, but really just a formality and that it would be supported. It was not until June 2021, when we were submitting the actual zoning interpretation request form, that we were told the second variance would unlikely be granted. Since 2019, we have already spent a substantial amount of money on this project. $2,000 for the clearing of trees in 2020 and $5,000 for a deposit on the pool in 2021. We made these decisions based on the guidance we are getting from the town of Northborough. The hardship which we are claiming is the location of our home in Area 1 of the Groundwater Protection Overlay District. The associated restrictions prevent us from being able to install an in-ground pool in our backyard due to the lot being only 56,000 square feet, which is less than the minimum of 80,000. According to the bylaws, in conjunction with the prior variance, which was approved by the ZBA in 2016, we are unable to install or build any impervious surfaces which cannot be 100% recharged. The only way to recharge a body of water would be to either enclose it or build a roof over it. To do this would be both cost prohibitive and also defeat the purpose of creating a family-centered outdoor space. We have looked into retractable solid surface covers, and these run well over $50,000. They are also huge due to the fact that it must be capable of withstanding New England snow. We have been told that if the variance is not granted, the only other option would be to purchase a new property. When we purchased this home, we believed it to be our forever home. Because it was new construction, we were able to actively participate in many of the building and design decisions. Consequently, our current home is unique in that we have made it truly ours. In doing so, we have also made a significant financial commitment to the property. It would be a financial hardship to move at this point in our ownership. A substantial portion of what we have already invested would not be recaptured. We also value living in the Northborough community and feel at home here on a macro level as well. We had planned and hoped to be here for the long term. We understand and fully support the purpose of the Groundwater Protection Bylaw, which is to protect the town's underground aquifer system. Despite the fact that the town wells are not being used at this time, we understand that it is still crucial to protect the viability of these wells. However, we do not feel that the roughly 700 square feet associated with our swimming pool will have a substantial impact on this system. This is only 1.2% of our total property square footage. Furthermore, it is only 0.5% of the original 313 Brigham Street property prior to the ZBA variance in 2016. This initial lot encompassed a total of 136,367 square feet. According to the bylaws, 15% of this property, which is around 20,000 square feet, could be impervious surface without needing any recharge. When the property was split into two, our lot at 313 lost that 15% allowance and now must be, and currently is, 100% recharged. The lot at 307, which is at the 80,000 square foot minimum, still gets the allotted 15%, which now only equates to 12,000 square feet. Combining their 12,000 square feet with our 700 square foot pool totals 12,700 square feet, which is roughly 9% of the original lot's total surface. This is well below the previous allowance of about 20,000 square feet. If the purpose of the groundwater protection overlay districting is to prevent any increase in impervious surface, beyond that which existed prior to 1986, it is important to note this fact, that even with our swimming pool, the resulting impervious surface is actually a much lower square footage than what was possible before the 2016 ZBA variance when the original lot was divided. We want to highlight that we are residents of Northborough and are requesting relief so that we can pursue a project that will benefit our family and home life. We are not a business entity or investor seeking adjustment for any form of financial gain. In fact, some would say swimming pool is a disadvantage when it comes to real estate. We understand that this is a second variance for this property, but the intentions associated with this variance are quite different from those which motivated the original appeal. Our builder used the initial variance to complete a project that provided him with financial gain. Furthermore, we have no plans or desire to build any additions to our home or do anything that would increase the existing septic system. We do have a well on our property, but we use this solely for the purpose of irrigating our lawn. We use town water for our home. We have consulted with Cornerstone Engineering in town. They provided the as-built for our building, for our builder in 2019, and would be able to do the same for this proposal once we receive a variance and permit. We are fully committed to supporting the bylaws and abiding by the 100% recharge of all other impervious surfaces related to this project, such as the patio, a shed, and pavilion. But we cannot realistically do so with a body of water. Lastly, we want to draw your attention to the letters of support we have gotten from 3 of our neighbors. These include 307 and 305 Brigham Street, as well as 102 Sunset Drive. These 3 homes either directly abut our property or will be able to see the proposed pool from their home or yard. I believe Fred has those. In closing, we ask that you voice any specific questions or concerns that you may have regarding this proposal so that we can have the opportunity to address them here and now. We thank you in advance for your thoughtful consideration of our request for variance.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to clarify. With regard to, did I understand this correctly? The original lot before it was subdivided exceeded 100,000 square feet and
136.
As a percentage proportion, it was entitled to a certain amount of additional impervious coverage. Is that right? And then subsequent to being subdivided, the 80,000 square foot lot retained some of that opportunity, but specifically this lot was prohibited. Is that correct? Or
my understanding, right. So when the original large lot, so my understanding of all existing lots in this area, 15% of the lots, even those that I mentioned, all the ones that have swimming pools but are like 20,000 square feet, they all, as I understand, get 15% of their property is able to use for impervious surface, or I should say 15% of their property post 1986, I guess, or something. But yes, the original lot, I understand that the 136,000 square feet, their 15% would have been around 20,000. Gotcha. When the prior builders went to the ZBA to get the variance in 2016, he divided it into an 80,000 square foot conforming lot, which is our neighbor. So they meet that minimum requirement for new properties post 1986. And so they get 15% of the 80,000 to use for like a house, you know, without having to recharge it. Now our property, because it was 56,000 under the 80,000, that needed a variance, and the variance was granted, and the groundwater committee recommended certain criteria, and the most important, which was that 100% needed to be recharged. And so the reason I think this is important is because that 15% of the larger property shrunk to only the 80,000 square feet, if that makes sense. So even if we get the variance for our pool, which is 700 square feet, that 15% is still much, much lower than what was possible with the original property, if that makes sense. And Fred can correct anything I've said that's wrong.
there's just one more clarification I want to make with respect to what you just said. You mentioned like 700 square feet for the pool, but is that literally the pool basin?
The pool, so 700 square feet would just be for the body of water, and then the larger project, I mean, we don't know, but we think it's going to be between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet.
Okay, that's one thing I wanted to clarify is the total addition of impervious, if I understand that correctly, would be
yes, you are correct in that,
2,500 to 3,000 estimated.
But the difference is that we would like recharge, like you can get pavers and things to, or slope and other dry wells, you know, that we could install for the patio and the other impervious surface.
Okay.
Which we're happy to do.
Right. Fred, I just want to check back with you on the statement about the impervious cover and with respect to these two lots. Is there anything inaccurate or that you'd want to clarify or correct?
I believe that everything that Christy said is true. The lot was 136,000 square feet, roughly. The applicant did create one conforming lot, which is 80,000 square feet, and that lot is required to have 15% or recharge anything over that. One thing I'd point out is that I believe, since I was working with you then, the reason the 100% recharge was recommended as a condition of the approval of the initial variance was because the lot was created at roughly 30% of the original 80,000. The 56,000 is about 30% smaller than what would normally be required. So that offset in area was recommended to be offset by, you know, having 100% recharge required so that we would be able to maintain that. The other point I'd like to mention is that it is confusing and a lot of people require some extra tutelage on the calculation on the impervious cover for lots that were created prior to 1986. It requires a little bit of work because any impervious cover that was existing prior to the adoption of the bylaw is what we used to call, we're not allowed to call it anymore, is grandfathered. It's exempt from the calculation. So first somebody has to do some research and determine approximately how much impervious cover was there prior to the adoption in 1986, and then subtract that from whatever the lot is, and then 15% is applied to that remainder. So many of those properties that you looked at with pools could have been created prior to, the pools could have been installed before 86, they could have come after. There's a whole myriad of situations that could occur that would allow them to go forward, some of which includes the fact that some people do put in swimming pools without getting permits, and we don't always catch everyone. So it's hard to compare them, but everything that she said mathematically does appear to be correct. It does make sense to me. The numbers that she presented do make sense. So I don't know what else.
Just to clarify, Fred, it is true that even though when you look at the pre-existing, the 15% is now actually less than what it was before the separation of the properties.
That's because any impervious cover that existed prior to 86 is no longer exempted, because under the state law, once you change property lines, you lose any grandfathered protection that you had prior to the adoption of the bylaw. So once you
Right,
changed the
right.
property lines, then it went back to 15 on the 80 and on your case, 100% on yours, because the variance allowed the lot to be less than the 80,000.
Right, and I get that part. I just want to make sure the rest of the committee understands that, that again, that 15% of what was possible to be
Correct.
impervious surface
Yes.
has shrunk since it was split into two, because now it's only 15% of
Yes.
80,000 square feet instead of 136.
But the reason that occurs is because at the time it was subdivided, the smaller lot was specified as a condition to require 100%.
Right, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to draw attention to the
Sure.
fact that us putting a pool in is like the fact that we exist, like the two properties, and in terms of protecting the impervious surface, it's actually less impervious surface allowable with the two lots than
Right.
the big lot.
It's equally important to note that without that variance, 313 Brigham Street would not be available to you to purchase as a separate lot.
I couldn't agree more, yeah.
Right.
And one addition I just wanted to make about, bringing up the 41 pools was more so, I totally fully suspect that those existed, I understand why they exist. I just think it as a resident, someone who's purchasing a home, you're looking and just comparing, you're living in this community and, it's requesting a pool is not unlike what all of our neighbors, a large portion of our neighbors have had.
The only one more thing, Jason, the only other
Sure.
thing I'd point out is, and it's unfortunate that the realtor and the builder didn't explain to you what created your lot, what variance was necessary, and I can't explain it other than you want to make a sale, you gotta tell them, I guess, most of the truth. But
Right.
in your deed that you presented as part of the package is a note in there that it's subject to the conditions of a variance granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So somewhere along the way, someone should have reviewed your deed with you or for you and explained that there were conditions that could potentially impact the installation of a swimming pool. And it's unfortunate that didn't happen, and I'm sorry in your case that it did, and it led to all of this. But as I stated earlier, variances are not a formality. This committee and the ZBA take them very seriously because they do set precedents for other people coming forward after you, who then try to assimilate what you're doing and what you get granted, if you do, to what they want to do. And then it's harder and harder to say no later on. So I leave it to the board, the committee to deliberate. I've presented the facts. I will answer any more questions I can to the committee, but
right. So for purpose of just, I guess, framing the board's discussion, as you said, there was mention made of representations by the builder and the real estate agent. Those considerations really aren't material for this committee. It may be relevant to the ZBA, but I don't, in their judgment. Similarly, we don't have any details about the representations that town staff might have made along this line also. And again, I don't think that's a consideration that this committee will take into account. The focus of this committee will, and third, the legacy aspect as far as which properties currently have pools or don't have pools. Again, I don't know that that's going to be a material consideration by this committee. Again, it may be something that the ZBA would entertain in making their decision. By prior discussion and agreement of members of this committee, with the exception of Anthony, who wasn't sitting on this committee at that time, this committee chooses to focus on essentially the technical aspects of the proposal and groundwater protection. And for the most part, I think our consideration will be confined to those elements for this specific proposal. I do want to check in with the other board members for their agreement or disagreement with that, but that's been the prior action or the prior conduct over roughly the last year or so. Anthony, would you like to?
Sure. So first of all, I'm so sorry that you all were misled. in purchasing your dream house. It's really unfortunate, and unfortunately, you're not the first people this has happened to. When buying a house, and this isn't a scolding to you at all, it's just happens to a lot of people. They don't realize you have to be a zoning expert to figure out exactly everything you want to do down the road, or what's next to you, or what somebody can build next to you, and all sorts of things that you just don't normally think of. And this is the case that's happened to you. And I do agree with you, Jason, that this is a technical review, and variances should be looked at extremely closely. And they are strict. And I also think it's very important for us to keep an eye on our groundwater and protect it for future use if need be for the wells. So in this case, I think it's really unfortunate you guys are misled, but I think our hands are, at least mine, are pretty tied.
Thank you, Anthony.
I guess one thing, is it okay?
Excuse me, could it please, I would like to, and I'm not asking for each board member to render a final judgment at this point. There may be aspects or questions or things that they have, but I do want to check in with each of them just to give them an opportunity to comment. Bryant, do you have any observations or considerations at this point?
No, I reviewed all the material and town engineers review, and I don't have anything to add that's hasn't already been said.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And Diane, would you like an opportunity to comment at this point?
I have a question, a couple questions. Is the driveway impervious, or are they doing something different with the driveway, like stone or leaving it natural or something? Would that count if they had done something like that? And then can their pool size, would it make a difference if their pool size is reduced at all? Or is that just fairy tale thinking for me?
I can answer the first question if you like, Jason.
Yes, please.
Because
Fred.
the condition in the ZBA decision required 100% impervious cover to be recharged, the driveway was pitched to a swale that goes into a recharge area. There's a bit of a water quality thing before the water goes back into the ground. So the driveway is already being recharged.
Okay.
And then as far as making the pool smaller or bigger, that's, I don't know what difference it would make. Whatever size the pool is, the pool cannot be recharged without a roof over it or some kind of cover that is either outlandishly expensive or not practical for other reasons. So unless the board has some particular amount of impervious that they would recommend approval for, I don't see what difference it makes, whether it's 700 or 2,000 square feet, or even 300 or 400 square feet. It can't be recharged.
Thank you.
Got it. Are there, I'm trying to think. Well, let me once again pull the board. I'm sorry, let me go to the applicant. Is there any other information not yet presented that you would like to offer?
Well, I appreciate your, what you had said about reorienting what is the purpose of the groundwater committee and like what you guys are thinking about whether you would support it or not. I guess what I would ask is for feedback about the primary point around the fact that the allowable impervious surface is actually less than what it was prior to 2016. And to get some feedback about what people feel about that perspective, because that is a fact and that is a technical, the fact that our lots were split into two allowed us to purchase the home, but also did result on in a much smaller amount of allowable impervious surface. So if the purpose is to protect the total amount of non-impervious surface, I guess, that has existed since 1986, the amount that this property now, 2 properties, is allowed is actually less because of the variance in 2016. So I guess I want to reiterate that, because it is confusing, and I appreciate people's thoughts about what our experience was in terms of our builder not being transparent. And I'd like to think that that was not willful, that anybody misled us purposely. But I do want to add that this is extremely confusing, and there isn't, yes, the deed has the variance on it. I didn't see that until this summer when I had to actually find the deed for you guys. But I just also want to throw it out there that, I don't want to, it's not helpful to blame the builder, the realtor, so to speak. I mean, I think it is a really complicated process, and I know for me, it took a really long time to understand all of this. So.
Thank you. I think the point you make is certainly understood, and I think in some respects we certainly sympathize with it.
Yeah.
It's a difficult situation in this particular case because the subdivision of the lots specifically imposed this condition on your lot. And speaking for myself, I find it difficult to second guess or undo that condition that was imposed specifically as part of the subdivision that occurred. Let me go back to the board.
What is the feedback, though, about the fact that the 15% has actually shrunk because of that subdivision?
Well, right, and absent any documentation to the contrary, it seems to me the assumption I have to make is that the Groundwater Advisory Committee and the ZBA or the Conservation Commission, whoever was involved, was aware that that would be the case and chose to move in that direction and impose that condition in the interest of being conservative and more protective of the groundwater in that area in consideration of the subdivision that was being proposed. I just, as I say, I don't have a documentation to that effect, either in favor or supporting that or undermining it, but I'm trying to I think, assume that the parties involved when that first variance was granted and the lots were allowed to be subdivided, that it was understood that imposing that restriction was reducing the impervious area that would otherwise have applied to the existing lot had it not been subdivided. Let me go back to the board members and just kind of catch up on their viewpoint at this point, and whether we could hypothetically examine what conditions we might impose if we thought there was a solution, and then put those hypothetical conditions in the hands of the ZBA, or we can just decide from this committee standpoint whether or not we even want to do that. So let me just check in with the board members here. Anthony, do you have any opinion on that?
I believe the only thing that I would consider is if it was covered and you could recharge the total area, would probably be the only thing that makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you. Bryant, do you have any opinion?
Not well. Within the context of the regulations and the confines we have to operate under, I don't think we should make a recommendation for this because it flies in the face of the existing variance which was granted. And if the ZBA wants to act on their own, and as they should, it's entirely, I think, their purview and not ours.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
The restriction was put there for a reason, to recognizing the groundwater issues, and I don't think would be wise for us to recommend ways of getting around that.
Very good, thank you. Diane, do you have any?
Outside of feeling empathetic for them for being stuck in this situation. I would wish that they could come up with some really creative idea to have a family space outdoors, whether it's a pool or something else that they could do that maybe could fit into their plans.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Fred, is there from an engineering aspect, are there any considerations about how the recharge would be accomplished, or is it simply the case that it's problematic to accomplish it without as Anthony said, overhead cover was the recommended solution,
Well,
if you want to call it that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to put Fred in a position where he's recommending
Okay, yes.
possible solutions. That's
Sure.
up to the applicant and the ZBA.
all I was going to say was that
Yeah.
we've talked about it, and it's quite clear the pool cannot be recharged without some kind of a cover that sheds water off to the side where it could be collected. So there's no engineering way to recharge the pool. So if that, I hope that answers your question, Jason.
Okay, that's sufficient. Yes. Are there any other? Yes, Christy.
I was just going to ask, and this might be ZBA, but like part of the application was to be clear about the request for variance if it was going to cause a substantial impact to the bylaw or the purpose of the groundwater protection district. And so who, I guess, defines that? Like, is that something you guys would do, or is that something you would pass to the ZBA? Like, are you guys just supposed to say you can recharge or not, or, you know?
Right. I think in many cases for what we review, we take account of the impact on groundwater, and typically an applicant proposes a solution or a mitigation or something that accomplishes the requirements of the bylaw to provide the appropriate recharge or provide the appropriate protection. In some cases, that might be, for example, hazardous materials on site that have to be contained and properly secured and ensure that no spillage could possibly contaminate the area. In more typical cases, you just simply have the considerations of impervious cover and making sure that any increases in impervious area don't violate the thresholds that are in effect.
Meaning, so like if someone else in a more, probably any other property in this town
yes, I mean,
had a pool, they could then recharge their house to like make up for the pool. And so like, this is a very unique situation. And
yes,
I just really ask you guys to think about your support's important, and to, you know,
right.
We are offering to get an engineer. We've already consulted one. We are, in terms of mitigating factors, like the whole project is going to be a much larger square footage, and we are going to address that and make sure that it's recharged. It's just, we can't do anything about water.
Right.
So
I think that is going to have to be the permit granting authority's discretion about whether to step beyond that and consider whether or not an exception, whether they're willing to make that exception.
And so it would be their decision then to define substantial, basically, because that was, you know, kind of the application said, you know, is it a substantial impact to the system?
Certainly, I think it is the special permit granting authority's probably determination of whether it's substantial or not. Under the current definition or the current conditions, the standard is 100%, and whether
right. So it's 1.2% reduction substantial.
Well, I hear you.
Well, yeah, and right, and it could be that's totally fine if, you know, if that's their decision.
I'm an engineer, so I certainly understand your viewpoint there.
Right.
With that said, I don't know that there's any additional information that would influence the decision of the committee. So I will invite a motion from a committee member, if one is forthcoming. Anthony, could I prevail upon you? I'm sorry, you're muted, Anthony.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to deny the permit for groundwater approval for 313 Brigham Street.
We're a recommending body, not
Okay.
a denial or approval, right?
So
If I could offer, I would suggest
Through the chair, how about if we have a motion to not provide a positive recommendation for it, something to that effect?
Fred, you had a suggestion?
Yeah, I would think the motion would be, if I'm gathering the tenor properly, is the motion would be to recommend not approving the applicant's request for variance.
Okay. So do I have that motion from a board member?
Okay, I'll do that again. I make a recommendation, or I recommend, what do I have already messed it up? I apologize. So used to doing it the other way. I'm not, help me out, Fred, sorry.
Make a motion to not recommend approval.
I make a motion to not recommend approval for 313 Brigham Street, groundwater approval.
And do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Anthony Zeiton, and I first heard a second from Bryant Furman. This is a roll call vote. Diane Goldner,
Yes.
Bryant Furman,
Yes.
Anthony Zeiton,
Yes.
and I, Jason Pro, also vote yes in support of the offered motion. So that is the communication that will go back from this committee to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Folks, I think all of us on this board are sympathetic and not really feeling great about having to come to this conclusion, but I think within the parameters of what we consider and the existing variance with its conditions, I don't think we had a lot of latitude here. Very sorry.
Thanks for hearing our case.
Okay. As mentioned, it still has to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. So
Yeah,
the door is not closed, but
we appreciate that.
Okay.
We'll hold on to that piece.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Okay, so I guess we could ask for Teresa to join us, and there she is.
Hello,
And,
Teresa.
I did see 4 people previously in the waiting room for the next applicant. Now there are 3. Their engineer seems to have dropped off, but I'll bring them in now and we'll let them make their presentation for 200 Bartlett Street, unless you have something else you
Nope.
want to discuss first. Okay.
Nope,
All right.
happy to proceed.
Here they come.
The next item on our agenda, as our next applicant is brought into the room, is to consider the petition of RJ Devereaux Corporation for a variance for an industrial use on the property located at 200 Bartlett Street, map 66, parcel 7, in the industrial zoning district and groundwater overlay district areas 1 and 3. The applicant is RJ Devereaux Corporation, and the representative presenting is Dario Damare. And welcome. Hello, Dario, I recognize you. If you could, and I see Ms. Devereaux here also.
Yes, and can I, before introducing everybody, we have
Sure.
a bit of an issue here, and I don't see him. He may not be on. is Vito Colonna from Cornerstone Engineering is our engineer on this, and he has a hard stop at 7, so he may not have joined. I don't know. I'm not sure who's running the Zoom, if you can see him, Fred.
Yeah, Fred can comment. Yeah.
He was here, Paula, at the beginning of the meeting, and he's no longer in the waiting room, so I assume he's had to leave.
Okay, all right. All right, because I was going to beg your indulgence to let him go fast and first, but he couldn't make it. So sorry about that, because he is the engineer on this project. Dario, do you have the plans that you could share?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Dario, if you want to, well, anyway, my name is Paula Devereaux. I'm an attorney at Pierce Atwood in Boston, and I'm representing RJ Devereaux Corp., which is a family. It's owned by my brother. It was started over 50 years ago by my uncle, and my father also worked there. And I do not work for the company. I am a independent lawyer for this, but I am representing them. We're here before you because RJ Devereaux Corp. Would like to buy the property at 200 Bartlett Street. They're an owner under agreement. And they have the rights under, as you'll see from the zoning board application, to file this application. They'd like to continue to use the property for industrial uses. One of those uses is an accessory use for automotive repair. RJ Devereaux is a contractor that does a lot of work for gas companies in the streets. In over 50 years, they've never owned their own yard. So they are seeking to purchase this to be able to make this a base of their operations. It is in both the groundwater protection overlay districts, number 1 and 3. And it's currently, there's 2 buildings or more than 2 buildings that are currently vacant. And Lammy Automotive is in a building to the rear. Lammy Automotive is received a variance for the automotive use and also received a special permit to be located in the groundwater protection overlay district. And with that, I will turn it over to, with me tonight is Rick Gates, who's worked at RJ Devereaux and is project manager for this project. And I'll turn it over to Dario Damare, who's the architect, who can lead you through the plans.
Okay, thank you. I just, before Dario begins, I just want to reiterate this Groundwater Advisory Committee is exactly that, advisory. We do not grant any approvals or denials. We make a recommendation to the special permit granting authority, which in your case is the planning board, is that correct?
So it'll be the zoning board of appeals initially for the use, and then we will also be required to obtain a special permit from the planning board.
Okay.
But the ZBA is first.
Right. I just wanted to be clear that everyone understands what the role of this committee is, and the scope of our consideration predominantly is going to be on the technical aspects of groundwater protection, and perhaps less so on the broader aspects of the applicable bylaws, which will come under the purview of the special permit granting authorities. Okay, very good.
Thank you, and I appreciate that.
Yep. Dario, please proceed.
Okay. To get in front of the DRC, I'll be recusing myself. Kind of interesting. So Greg's with me, and he's done a lot of work on this. Do you want to pull up the initial drawing?
I think what I will do is allow the participants to share their screen, and that should give Dario the ability to show us what he wants us to see. How about now? That working? Okay.
Your screen? You see it?
I do. Everyone else?
Yes. Do all the members of the board have a clear view?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so basically, I don't know who's familiar with the property and who's not, but yep. Can you see the cursor okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so that's Bartlett Street, and a couple things that we were doing, and it's not all groundwater, but I think if you just understand the project first, what Vito would have told you and will tell you, and we will provide, is that we did get some of his comments, and we can go through those, but in every case, we can address the questions and concerns that were in the comments. But just so you're familiar with the project, I'll just kind of walk you through some basic fundamentals.
Excuse me, Dario, if I could, Mr. Gates, I'm not sure. I think we're getting some sound intrusion from you. I wonder if you could mute, please, and see if that clears that up. Yep, Dario, please.
Okay.
Continue.
So a couple things that we were looking to do. The client wants, and I'll put in quotes, do the right thing, and it was nice to hear because everything that we asked them to do, they were 100% on board with, starting with screening and planning, and we're going to upgrade the facades to the building. Everything that's here would remain here. We're not looking to add any building. We will be adding impervious, which obviously affects the groundwater. We would also be adding an area here for some of our supplies, which we will also be covering. But we are removing some of the impervious near the road to try to get just better foliage and screening of our parking area. And right now, does this have both drawings on it? Yeah. Okay, because one of the questions that Fred had asked was to talk about, he said, well, I noticed there's two different plans. One that showed maximum use, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the cursor. And then the next one, go ahead, Greg. You get the other one to come up. Maybe yes, maybe.
Oh,
okay, so notice it says typical use. What we were just trying to show you guys was that maximum use shows what it would look like there first thing in the morning when all of the employees show up. They get their manifest, they get their directions on where they're going to go do work out in the community, whether it's Northborough, Shrewsbury, Southborough. So they'll all be there for, 15 minutes to an hour or so, gathering their supplies, getting their directives, and then they go out and they do work. And when they're gone, this is kind of how loaded the parking lot would be during the normal working hours of the day. But we just wanted to show you best case and worst case. And that was more for you, Fred. So you're like, hey, the drawings look the same. They are identical. It was just trying to give you some idea of what would be here during the day. And they're also a normal working hour company, 7:30 in the morning till 4 or 5 at night, and that's it. But for the most part, the parking lots will not be full. Laney has a lot of cars that are parked there, and we accounted for everything that they had. So we would be adjusting the drive out onto Bartlett again, so that people don't see anything that's going on in the back. We put all of our storage. We had 4 little store yards, and they're actually behind the building, so we don't have to see the store yards. Everything is within the building setbacks. We have the setbacks shown here. And if you just look to the right, real simply, each of the required minimums or maximums, we put what's required by code. And I don't know if you can see it because there's pictures to the right, but under provided, everything that we've provided meets the code. Impervious obviously is the most important one for groundwater. So we're at 48% and the maximum was 50%. We also, even though, by right, we could build past the no build zone with buildings, we didn't even want to pave into the no build zone and obviously stayed out of the no touch zone with respect to the wetlands. And a lot of this was just trying to do the right thing and keep everything as, I'll call it, green as possible, with the acknowledgement that they need certainly a lot of paving to do what they do for a living. The other aspects of, as far as the groundwater is concerned, we are adding more paving, but in every case, it would be detained and filtered and and never allowed to enter into the groundwater or into the wetlands or anything else. And that's where Vito would be able to opine better than me. But when we discuss all of the comments, there's nothing there that we can't accomplish. So that if Fred's happy, then hopefully the rest of the world is happy, because then we're really just in essence meeting the letter of the law so that things will comply. A couple questions came up, and if you want, I can go through the list very quickly and just tell you where we are with things that Fred had said, and it was a good list. And you guys have that list? There were 10 items on the list?
Yes, we have a copy of that.
Okay, so I'll just go through them real quickly and address it, and then hopefully that does address everything. And if you've got more questions, then fire away. And I will not pretend to know if I don't know. Then we'll say, hey, Vito, will get back to us. So the first thing is more of a statement: 6 acres with slightly more than half the property being located in groundwater area 1. And groundwater area 1 on this drawing here is on the left, and on the right, we intentionally put even our store yards there, just to stay out of groundwater level 1. So the only thing we're adding to here is just parking. Some of the buildings on the parcel have been vacant for many years. There does not appear to be adequate drainage systems. A new drainage system in full compliance with all town, state, and state regulations would be an improvement to the site, to the protection of groundwater. We agree, and we're going to do that. We will be renovating the buildings so that they're presentable and usable to Devereaux and presentable to the town, so nobody's ashamed with what's here. So that's going to be done. Honestly, whether you guys asked us to or not, they just want things to be cleaned up and look good. Number 3, the applicants include photos of some storage cabinets. We've now got the specs on the cabinets, and what we'll do is we're going to provide a list that shows the chemicals. Next to the list, it shows what containers they're stored in, as well as the quantities, to show that each chemical that we are using is being stored properly, and we have the appropriate size to store the amount that we're using. So that'll all be put on a single chart. Which, did you do that already? Is it here? Yeah. Right. All right, I'm gonna let Greg, because Greg took all the brains here. I'm the good looking one. And I'm gonna take credit for all his work. But we have a little chart, and this is the chart that will refer to the name of the materials and then what containment system we're using. We will give you the specs on the containment system, and you'll also get the full MSDS sheets on each one of the materials, as well as the quantities. And then that way, everything you want to know will be documented. This is a simpler form, because as you know, the MSDS sheets can be really long, but we will provide them for every single product that we're using. And then you want to flip to the storage locker. So then we'll show you the containers and give you the specs on the containment systems, as well as the quantities. And that goes through several of the questions that Fred had through here. So yes, we'll document everything and make sure they're all code compliant. So list of chemicals, that was number 5. We'll do it's not clear how the building will be heated. Our intention is to use gas. There's a gas line that comes in, and we can go back to the initial site plan. There is a gas line in the road. We don't intend to heat with oil. So that gas line is right up here in the northwest corner. So we don't have intentions of using oil heat, so we won't be storing any additional oil on the site. Sites will be regraded and repaved to include a berm around the entire limits. Okay, yes, and we'll do that and show that on the topos. The variance narrative indicated the applicant will need to store some construction materials. Yes, we will show you in gray here are the materials, and yes, they will be covered. These roofs slope back to the grass where we can catch, retain, and filter any of the runoff. It's not going directly into the wetlands or any of that area. So we'll show the roofs that complies. Number 9, 9 and 10 really referred to 707 -010D. And after talking with at Cornerstone, the answer was yes, we'll do all that stuff and make sure that we comply. And on that, there's not a whole lot more from our end. You can see for the runoff, we've got an infiltration system here that's open. And then another one here below the parking, a contained infiltration system as well, so that we do have a way to drain and filter the water back into the groundwater.
Sorry, I'm getting some intrusive noise here. Could people mute if they're not speaking to ensure that don't have any interference?
Yeah, I heard
Thank
it
you.
too. That's like,
Yeah.
Would you say? Oh yeah, we'll grab Vito's drawings too. Let me just. These are more cartoons because they're kind of easier to understand than the real engineer's drawings, because then the smart stuff comes out. So this is Vito's drawing, and then the existing conditions. Okay. So it's the existing conditions, and then go ahead to the next one. And this is showing a lot of the water retention and management, where you can see here there's an underground system and another system here with the catch basins and the tobos to slope everything properly so that we don't have any runoff. And the other requirements that you asked for after discussing it with Vito, there didn't seem to be a problem meeting any of those. So the newest drawings would have all that, the things that Fred had asked for provided. And we do appreciate the list, because you guys have this stuff memorized, and it's almost, cheating asking you to tell us what's wrong, because then it's easy to make it right than us spending, 400 years trying to read every code. So thank you, Fred, for doing our work for us. Because I think complying with this should not be a problem with, at least what Vito had looked at everything and felt comfortable with it. So that's it if you guys have questions.
Thank you. Yes. I will ask board members if they, well, let me first, Fred, any technical clarifications or comments based on that presentation?
I guess not quite sure. Dario indicated that they would give us a list with the chemicals and containment structures for each, but I'm not sure if that's something that's going to come back to this board and then we can review it and send a recommendation to the ZBA, or is it something he plans to present directly to the ZBA and ask us to make a recommendation without seeing it? I'm not quite sure what his intention was with that.
I would hope that you would see it first. You guys are the ones with that experience.
Okay.
And I would hope you would get to see it first.
Okay. So my concern in the review memo regarding the chemicals was there was several on there. Some of them were gases, which are not necessarily a concern for the Groundwater Advisory Committee, more so for the fire department, but not for the Groundwater Committee. It says they can't contaminate the groundwater. But my other concern about the list was those that weren't gases was pretty limited to oil. And I didn't know, you're doing maintenance, there's got to be other stuff. There's got to be, I'm thinking there's got to be some brake cleaners and brake fluids and antifreeze and some other things. And those need to be listed as well. So when you said you're going to provide another list, is it just this list with the containment areas, or is it will there be additional chemicals that might be stored on there and part of the overall list?
I'm 99% sure there are additional chemicals, but I think, and I'll let Rick speak to this again, because when I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know, but I think they're just in little self-contained, jars or bottles or cans. But Rick, are you here?
Rick's still muted.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, how's that?
There you go.
First of all, I want to apologize for making noise earlier. Work continues this late at night. Yeah, as far as the chemicals and the materials that we'll have, first of all, what's been represented is that we're going to be servicing automobiles, and primarily we're going to be servicing small engines, lawnmower size engines, and any repairs or maintenance we're going to be doing to vehicles is going to be basically brakes, oil changes, tire changes, that kind of thing. So it's not going to be an extensive list of chemicals or solvents to any degree. Yeah, we'll probably have a little bit of antifreeze and parts cleaner, but it's really going to be limited. This is not a massive fleet that we're going to be maintaining. Building is primarily for the equipment out in the field, which quite frankly is everything from weed whacker that's got a broom fitted to the end of it to a generator, small generators to plate compactors. They're all single cylinder engines, and 70% of the maintenance we're going to be doing in that building will be pertaining to that, or working on trailers which have no fluid in them. So there's going to be very little when it comes to chemicals. You know, in fact, that storage container probably will be all we're going to need for the chemicals that we're going to have in that building.
Okay. I don't know how much you want me to go back and forth with them, Jason. I'm happy to have a dialogue or let the board ask.
I assume that this board would prefer to see a comprehensive list of all chemicals that they would be using or even anticipate using in the course of the activities they're proposing to do there. So I'd like to see the comprehensive list and the associated, containment and storage for those.
Okay.
Dario, is all the maintenance, or perhaps Rick, you can answer it better, is all the maintenance being done in that maintenance building, and the only activity in the Devereaux office building is the administrative building is just paperwork? There's no chemicals or mechanical operations being performed inside that building?
That's correct. That maintenance building is strictly going to be interior. Everything's going to be done within inside that building. That's the reason we're buying it, to finally give my mechanics shelter. Now they basically do a lot of it outside, so they'll be very happy. The administrative building that's located on the GW1, that is going to be for training purposes and for administrative. Hands-on training, and everything inside is dry, no chemicals, nothing along those lines. So there's going to be nothing in that building that will be able to leach into any kind of wetlands or anything along those lines.
And when we talk about training, that building, we say it's Office of Administration. There's only going to be 2 or 3 people in there unless they're having a training seminar where they'll be teaching about how do you dig this hole without disrupting that? How do you bury this new pipe so that it doesn't explode in the future? So they're really teaching all their protocols on how to work in the field. So it's actually much more a training center than an office building, but the function is really office function where all the new workers come in and learn how to keep up with the latest that comes.
Just a couple more follow-ups on that, Dario. When you have a construction company and you're talking about training, it's important for me anyways to distinguish between classroom activity with paper and pencil or, equipment and how they operate and stuff. And will there be any automotive pieces of equipment inside that building? Because there is at the entrance, there is a ramp there, and there's a dock entrance in the back. So not quite sure what those are for an administrative office building with, classroom and computers and things.
Yeah, it's parts and supplies, but I'll let Rick speak to that.
Yeah, so the hands-on, the training is going to be hands-on computer training and initial training of employees, new hires. The very back of the building will contain stock for distributing to the crews out in the field. And having the ramp and the doors is strictly so that we're going to have an electric fork truck in there in order to move pallets of different materials that we supply the crews with. Everything from cases of water to couplings and a variety of different things out in the field. So the training end of it is going to be hands-on, safety training, as well as first aid training, all of those kinds of things that's required by our customers. And they literally have tripled our requirements for hands-on training, and that's why this is very imperative for us, is to be able to acquire this piece of property, because we need to be able to train the guys more on a lot of it safety. A lot of it is just really small. There's going to be 4 or 5 guys, men and women, at a table just learning how to put fittings together properly, how to operate hands-on equipment, small equipment properly, that kind of thing.
The fittings go together with mechanical fittings or chemical fittings?
They're going to be mechanical fittings, but a lot of them are actually melted together. It's plastic, and what they'll do is they use a heater in between 2 ends of a piece of pipe, and they'll heat both ends at the same time, remove the heating element, and put the 2 pieces together, and it actually melts them together. Another way is a coupling, which a piece of pipe will slide in either end, and then an electrofusion machine is attached to it, and goes to one of our generators that we're maintaining. And they actually has wires inside that coupling that heat up, and it melts everything together.
So there's no actual solvent that's used to clean the plastic.
It's actually quite clean. In fact, it has to be very clean. That's one of the training end of it, is making sure the rags that they use don't have any, they have to be white rags with no ink in them, no dye in them, using alcohol to clean everything. It has to be quite clean. So there'll be nothing along those lines. Anything mechanical would be a compression style fitting, and knowing how to ratchet the compression style fitting to the correct pounds per square inch, etc.
Okay. I guess that pretty much covers my letter. I guess what I would want to have the committee consider is that one, you'll want to make sure that you have a complete list of chemicals, because that should be part of your recommendation if you're going to recommend approval to the ZBA, so that the variance specifically limits the amount of chemicals in the building. And then if we're going to have, it sounds as though they're committed to only storing those in the building that's in the groundwater 3 area, that should also be part of a recommendation, if there's a recommendation to go forward as an approval. The other thing is that there's, we had recommended a variance in groundwater 1 at 1 Lyman Street for various reasons. And when the variance was granted, it allowed the applicant to go directly to the planning board without coming back to the groundwater committee. And that's fine, because the site plan was pretty well developed. In this case, it's not. So the committee should consider whether or not they want to have it come back to them for another review prior to going forward with the special permit granting authority, or if you're willing to do what you did at 1 Lyman Street and recommend the variance, and then the applicant is no longer required to, the variance granted them permission to do what they wanted in groundwater 1 with no conditions of returning for review or having anything else addressed other than having the site plan meet the requirements that are outlined in the groundwater protection portion of the bylaw. So it's something that I guess I would like some clarification from the committee, if in fact, when you're ready to vote.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Members of the committee, if you have any questions, Diane, I'm going to check with you first, since I don't see video for you.
No questions.
No questions. And Bryant?
I'm sorry, I lost my mute button there for a minute. There's quite a bit of impervious area there, a lot of parking areas. I'd like to see some mention of what to do with snow removal. And if you're gonna use sand, calcium chloride, or other ice treatments, and where that will wind up.
Quite frankly, we're planning on doing nothing but sand in the yard, because those other chemicals just, quite frankly, make a mess.
Okay.
We don't like that whole thought of doing that. So it'd be primarily sand throughout the property. Snow removal. Dario can kind of point out some of the areas we're piling the snow, and where we can put it. And yeah, we'll be clearing out primarily all the parking lots, and a lot of the page that's up right now. A lot of those trailers will be there throughout the winter and aren't going to be moving, so a lot of the snow is just actually going to sit on top of them, and it's not going to go anywhere. So Dario, if you want to show them with a cursor where we're looking at piling up the snow, that'd be great.
Okay, and I know Vito went through this, but we've got some big areas here. If you assume these parking spaces are 10 feet, this is probably 40, 50 foot deep here. We've got islands kind of throughout for snow, and here as well, and all along the sides.
So most of it will wind up in that infiltration basin?
No, not in the basin. No, we can't even get back to the basin. It ends up here on the corner.
Yeah.
Where the cursor is.
Okay, that was my concern, that all the sand would wind up in the infiltration basin.
Oh, no, that's all blocked by our containers.
Okay.
Yeah, so just water goes there, but we would have a lot here. We would put some on the side here and up in the front, but not here. We've got it kind of blocked actually, and we would plow in front of these sideways, but not through them.
Okay.
We can show the snow removal areas as well, just with dotted lines and say snow removal, so you see where it's going.
It would be helpful to have, a map or something that kind of identifies those. Yeah.
I was going to ask Fred, should we have an O&M, short O&M report for snow and ice removal?
Well,
just given the size of the area.
Eventually, I think you will want one of those. I think what's important to keep in mind is that this application is for variance. So what the committee needs to do is be comfortable with the use that's being proposed in the groundwater 1 and the groundwater 3 area. Make sure that you have sufficient details to feel comfortable recommending approval. And if not, then you recommend not to approve, as was previously done. But we need to get the committee comfortable with what the proposed use is and the impacts it has on the groundwater specifically, so that you could then feel comfortable enough to recommend approval. A lot of the details that I have a lot of questions and a lot of comments that I would make, but I'm saving them for the site plan review that I will do if in fact the variance is granted. So what the most important thing is the list of chemicals and where they're going to be, and then groundwater 1, groundwater 3, which building. The snow storage areas are something that would be required, when conservation does a review, when I do a review for site plan, if there is one. All of that is kind of the next step if the variance is granted. If not, it's kind of moot. And the O&M plan would come at that time when the stormwater plan is. I will have some comments if the variance is recommended for approval and the ZBA grants it. I will have many comments on the site plan that I would be looking for. Specifically, I would like to see the entire perimeter of the parking lot with a berm around it so that it's all captured and that none of it is washing off the pavement onto a grassed area that could get into the basin or into the wetland without going through a water quality separator. I didn't necessarily see water quality separators, although I think when Vito prepared his plan, it was not intended to be a site plan. It was more a general interpretation of what he saw for drainage being added and things that would come later on. So again, the basic point we need to get to tonight or before you can make your recommendation to the ZBA is a comfort level that the committee is at with the use. And because it's a variance, we need to have conditions for recommending approval if that's what you choose to do. That help?
So we had the cart before the horse.
Can I
It's an
just,
important horse, though.
can I follow up on what Fred said to, with respect to coming back to this board before a site plan review with the planning board? We're not asking really to sort of be exempt from that. And I think that many of the questions on, operations and snow removal are things that will be added to the plan once, we hopefully get the variance, because we know that those matters are, will be looked at very carefully by the planning board, and would be, we would welcome coming back to this group prior to us going to the planning board for site plan review, just to run through those types of issues that might arise during site plan review and for the special permit for that.
Okay, thank you. I'll go next to Teresa Capobianco.
Thank you. And, overall, I think that this plan looks like an improvement on what's there in terms of a groundwater situation. So thank you for undertaking the project. I do have a couple of questions. Is there I know that there was just a discussion about an O&M for snow removal and sanding, but is there an O&M proposed for the infiltration systems that actually will result in those waters going into the groundwater?
Asking me.
I'll grab that one for Vito. Vito would get it if he was here, but
Yeah.
what Bryant was talking about was the O&M was the infiltration systems and the whole drainage system, which hasn't been completely designed, or if it has, it wasn't presented as part of the variance request. It really is something that we would view at the site plan review point. The fact that Paula indicated they'd be willing to come back so you could get a chance to review the site plan is appropriate. I think that one of the main things is the use, the parking lot, the drainage system, the snow storage areas, lighting, landscaping, all of that falls under site plan review and approval. But the chemicals, so I wouldn't want you to recommend approval of a project without having a firm grasp on how many chemicals, how much volume they're going to be storing and how they're going to be storing it, and what the risk hazard is for those chemicals being spilled in the parking lot, either during delivery or during the operation of the use. That's what I think the committee needs to get to, is that comfort level on the use, enough to recommend approval if they want to, and then the site plan specifics that we would review once that variance is granted. If you wanted to grant it, it then just becomes the same as any other industrial use that's not necessarily in groundwater. We would still do the infiltration, the drainage calculations, the snow storage areas, access, egress. One of the things that the groundwater committee typically recommends is to reduce the amount of pavement as much as possible without impacting the flow of traffic within the site. And in looking at the plan that's on the screen now, especially that island of parking in the middle, there seems to be quite a bit of pavement to the east. And so perhaps there's an opportunity for that to be reduced, which would then in turn reduce some of the drainage calculations. And it might even give some more green area for snow to be stored, at the site plan level. Those are the kind of comments that I'll make when they're ready to go for their site plan. But I think, not to beat a dead horse, but what I want the committee to, what I would prefer the committee have is a high enough comfort level to recommend approval, if that's your desire, with the use and the chemicals and the hazards that are presented in the groundwater 1 area.
Right, so Fred, thanks, because that actually leads into one of the other questions I'd written down, was in terms of the delivery of the chemicals and the oils to be used on site. Is it the intention of the applicant to drive the delivery trucks into the garage to make those deliveries and then drive out the exit of the garage, or are they doing deliveries from the parking lot?
It would be from the parking lot.
Again, they're all in the maintenance building?
Correct. And we do have a loading there, and most likely the deliveries would be brought to that. So I guess you would consider that the parking lot. So the vehicles won't enter the building to get unloaded. They back up to the loading dock to get unloaded for that intention. And the waste oil that would be picked up, once every 6 months or so, that would be a delivery truck. Probably would park on the outside, I believe, and then evacuate the used oil. Again, this is something new for this company, so I'm assuming that's the way they would pick up the used oil. And the delivery of the 55-gallon drums would probably be at that loading dock and unloaded that way.
The used oil is also something that needs to be appropriately delineated as to how it's being handled and stored within the building. There are containment requirements. The fire department, I believe, as typically is done with this committee, is that the containment for each of the chemicals or the cabinets would be 150% of the total amount of material that's stored within the cabinet or the whatever device you use. If there are sprinklers and there's chemicals in the building with sprinklers, then some containment for the sprinkler water that could mix with any of the high hazard material would need to be contained so that it couldn't get out into the parking lot and into the drainage system. So again, that's a little bit more of what I would review at a site plan level, but you need to be aware of it, as I know Vito is from previous projects, but you need to be aware that it's a consideration, should you go forward.
That's all I have for now. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Teresa. Anthony?
Just a couple questions. In here, and if you've covered any of this and I missed it, I apologize. There's a section in groundwater 3 that says spoil 75 yards. I'm not certain what that is.
So spoil is an improper labeling of material that has been brought in. We call it spoil because we can't use it. It's really gravel that's unusable for us out in the field. We install a natural gas line. That's what we install, natural gas lines. The gravel that replaces anything that's removed basically has to have stones that are no more than a half an inch round. And anything that has larger stones in it, roots in it, clay, anything like that, we call it spoil because we can't use it. So that would be material that if we had a crew nearby, that would be more advantageous to drop off and store temporarily in the yard and pick up sand or processed gravel and bring it to the crew. That's what would be there. It's not with chemicals. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a slang term that we use on calling it spoil because we can't use it.
Sure. And maybe, so Fred, you or anybody, can anybody talk about the water infiltration systems and how should there be a vehicle leaking oil or gas and how that can be contained and filtered out? I mean, even before getting to the basin?
That is typically reviewed as part of the site plan. What happens is there's a series of what we call a closed drainage system, where you have catch basins that lead to drain manholes, and they all are required to process the water that's carried through the piping system through a water quality separator, which then allows the water to rise above, the oil to rise above the water, where it can be siphoned off and cleaned properly if there's a spill or some kind of just the usual hydrocarbons that drip off the cars and go into the drainage system. They're separated in that water quality separator before it gets to the infiltration basin. But again, it's not particular to a groundwater issue. It's something that we review in all parking lots and all drainage systems.
And then you'd mentioned you'd like to see a berm potentially around. Is that for containment purposes?
Yeah, as you go down the road, you see that we have curbing. Some places it's granite, some places it's made out of asphalt, and it acts as an edge along the side of the road and allows the gutter, the water to flow along the gutter to get to the next catch basin. By having that around the perimeter of the paved surface, it allows nothing to shed off of the parking lot, which could carry any contaminants that are in the parking lot or any kind of spill that might drip off, even drippings off of vehicles. It happens with new cars, old cars, doesn't matter. That allows them to be contained. And so when the water is, when it rains, the water carries some of that stuff to the drainage system, and then it goes through the water quality separator as opposed to just sheet flowing off of the parking lot. So my recommendation is that there be a berm around the limits of it to contain it within the drainage, within the paved surface.
And then for the applicant, is all this L parking, I assume, is for Lammy Automotive?
Yes.
Okay. And the other point I would be interested in seeing potentially, and that Fred mentioned, is reducing the amount of asphalt, certainly in that large area, if it were possible.
This is Dario. We can look at it. This one area here, it's probably not real apparent, but these vehicles need like 100 feet. It's the length of the truck plus 10 feet behind them. So the back out of these, I don't know if you can see the cursor, it comes to about here. This is where we're pulling in and out of the garage to service the vehicles. They come in and out here. This area needs to back up. Is it possible right here? Maybe we can extend the island out a little bit, but we still have to let these vehicles back out. So there may be a little bit there, but we will certainly take a look at that.
And for the applicant, so they've got a lot of these parking spaces labeled with a box trailer or flatbed trailer, and certainly in the back area, and then you see the vehicles more up front. How hard and fast is that going to be in terms of not having more actual vehicles near ground, or the wetlands areas?
I think for illustration purposes, Dario put everything in there to get an volume. And what you're seeing with this is really our maximum, which is in the winter when we're slow, when we can't dig in the streets. So that's when trailers that are normally left on site and not back to the they are brought here because our people are basically laid off February. So that would be the worst case scenario, is having all those trailers in there. So as far as vehicles go, there's really going to be a lot more trailers than there will be vehicles. Any vehicles that are going to be stored on site for any period of time are going to be extras, perhaps a spare dump truck, a spare crew truck, a runner's truck, that kind of thing. Everything else is really going to end up being one or two pieces of equipment, a backhoe, that kind of thing, skid steer. Everything else is trailers, because that's how we go about our business. All our crews are out on the job sites. They don't come to the yard first. Only our runners do and our supervisors do. And that's a general sense too. Half the time they go directly to the sites as well. So a lot of what you're seeing right now is what you're going to see during the summer. There's literally nothing there. It's going to be pretty much a ghost town other than 2 mechanics and a couple people in the administrative building filing through paperwork. So vehicle-wise, there is going to be a lot less than it sounds like. I know when you hear a construction company, that's all you think of is big pieces of equipment, et cetera, and that's really not what we do. Most of the equipment out on the street we don't own. We actually subcontract, and it stays out and won't be brought in or serviced in this facility. What we do own are trailers, and a lot of the 123, I think at the last count. So not all of those are going to come here, but half of them, 45% of them, we rolling through here for maintenance and brought back out to the street, and that's where that plan showing a lot of the trailers. That's what that's showing is when we do service them, which is in the winter when they're not being used, them sitting there waiting to be serviced and inspected, and then brought back out.
And Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but just for everybody else's, just clarity or edification, most of these folks take their work vehicles home, so they don't even park them here overnight, and they go directly to the job. And you would think that every employee doesn't come here in the morning and say, where am I going to work? They get sent their mission electronically, and to get supplies and equipment, that's what Rick was referring to as a runner. So the runner may come here and park his car and then take the truck back and forth, dropping off gravel or pipes or valves or tools. But these guys, even though there's a whole bunch of guys, they're not coming here, dropping off their car, picking up a truck. Their truck is parked in their driveway at home, and they just go do the job, especially if the guy lives in Worcester. There's a job in Shrewsbury, he won't show up. Or he'll go to Shrewsbury, he'll do his work for the 8 hours, he'll go back to Worcester, and you'll never know he was here. But in the winter, when everything's shut down, we tried to show you both, because I think sometimes if we show you this, yeah, there's worse. That's everybody's here. Everything they own is parked, and it's unusual, but it could be the middle of February. But we also want to be 100% honest and transparent about how we operate. But you'll sit here and say they must be going out of business if you look at it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, on a Tuesday. You'll say, where is everybody? And the Devereaux are real happy if there's no one there, because it means they're out making money doing the job.
Okay. And I think lastly, I noticed there's a couple vacuum trucks. Can you say what those are used for?
Those are vacuum excavation vehicles. Right now, there's a big trend with the gas company because of recent events, we'll call them. The anniversary was yesterday up in the Lawrence Merrimack Valley. We excavate in an area where there's extra sensitive materials in the ground or utilities in the ground. The vacuum truck is really something that is basically what it sounds like. It's a very noisy, very loud truck that actually draws up the gravel without having to put a backhoe or dig or shovel. And that way we don't damage any utilities below ground. So it basically draws in all the material and safely excavates. That's really what those are for. And they're out virtually every day in and around areas. We actually expose gas mains so that we know the depth of them, and gas services, so we know the depth. So when we're digging, when we come up to it, we have to be at a certain depth to go underneath it or over it based on where it is. Plus, we don't want to create, and we want to make sure that all the markings that are in the street are correct. So that's what we use in a vacuum truck to draw out all the materials. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Anthony. If I could just kind of step up a level here. If I understand correctly, Fred, the applicant is going before the ZBA to request a use variance. The use variance is for the accessory use of engine repair and maintenance. And what the applicant is proposing to do here is to construct the maintenance building in Groundwater 3 and conduct all the accessory use activities inside that building However, some of the vehicles that will be repaired will be temporarily parked in the groundwater 1 area or will transit across the groundwater 1 area in and out of the maintenance building. And it's that concern that requires the use variance from the ZBA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so for purposes of this decision, with respect to that use variance, whatever recommendation we make is concerned specifically with the maintenance aspect primarily. And as you said, the activity of doing the repair, the hazardous chemicals or something that might be used in doing that, and whatever containment, I suppose, in that immediate surrounding area. And the purpose of proposing this organization on the site is because the maintenance activity is permitted in groundwater 3. That's why the maintenance building is being located there. And so it's this incidental incursion, I guess, into groundwater 1 by the vehicles that will be serviced that is the concern that requires the use variance. Okay, so if we make that consideration and provide a recommendation with respect to that aspect to the ZBA in their decision process regarding the use variance, we still have a future engagement with this applicant for the broader site plan analysis and the other considerations that have been raised by some of the board members?
Yes, theoretically. In my opinion, you would need to include that requirement for them to return to you to review the site plan as if a special permit was required, or you require them to still get the special permit, but you would want to put some controls on the amount of chemicals and the fact that they're only stored in the maintenance building and not in the administrative building. Some details around that should be, I assume, specified in your recommendation and then hopefully upheld by the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, I guess from my perspective, there's a lot going on here on this site, a lot of different considerations like impervious area coverage, proximity toward the infiltration basin of some of the other vehicles or containers being positioned there, the location of the snow removal, where that's being deposited. I don't think with the information I have right now that I'm prepared to arrive at any decision that is like a comprehensive or complete or only review and decision that I would be comfortable with. So I guess I'm trying to understand, are we able to kind of narrow the scope of consideration and make a decision with respect to that in order to make a recommendation to ZBA with respect to the use variance and still have an opportunity at a later time to review the other considerations for the overall site?
Well, I mean, that's up to the members of the committee. I would say that as a minimum, you would want to quantify the exact amount of volume of chemicals to be stored on site. And I'm assuming we're comfortable that a requirement that they're only stored within the maintenance building, but then how they're stored would be appropriate before you finalize your recommendation. I do have one other question I wanted to pose to the applicant. If you'll just indulge me with one more question. In reviewing the narrative, I think it's the third paragraph indicates that the parcel has existing contamination from prior tenants or the owner or industrial uses. And I'd wondered if you could just expand upon that as to exactly what kind of contamination you're referring to there. Is it just failing septic systems, or is it, what exactly are you referring to? If that's, I don't know if that's for Rick or for Paula or for Dario.
No, I can answer that. There is existing contamination that came out of where the administrative building is. It's not, there was prior, there was a leaching field. This property used to be used for electric circuit manufacturing. And there was a environmental spill here many years ago. It's been, in fact, I don't think I have it with me. And this property is under, it's called, it'll be under remedy operation status under the mass contingency plan, and will be subject to attenuation to clean up the area. It's behind the administration building and in front of Lammy's Automotive. So it is within the Groundwater 1 district,
Okay.
but Devereaux Corp will be undertaking the cleanup in all of the, well, not necessarily the cleanup because it was cleaned up, but will be undertaking all the reporting obligations that go forward and testing obligations that go forward after that.
So are you under, if you don't mind, Jason, are you under administrative consent order, or are they under some direction as to what's happening there?
There's no current administrative consent order. If we go forward with the purchase of the property, we'll have to go back to DEP in order to either get to an administrative consent order or to remedy operation status.
I guess I would be, I guess I would like to know what the level of the cleanup is before, you know, activity for any new use were to go forward. But I think that's something that we should get some more details on so that we can make sure that it's appropriately cleaned, or there's who's responsible for that cleanup, or
so ultimately
your job, your work.
So ultimately, it's always the owner or the operator that is responsible for this. So when Devereaux takes title to this, Devereaux will become the owner and the operator and will be responsible for all cleanup in the future. There was a cleanup done when this happened, and it's over 10 years ago. But there have been wells, and there has been some product that has been found in the wells. So they're undergoing, one of the things if we go forward will be we have an LSP that we've contracted with that has been looking into this for us. And we understand that going forward, it'll be Devereaux's responsibility to continue with any cleanup that's required.
I'm not quite sure how to advise the committee on what they would want to have for confirmation that the cleanup is done before the site is renovated into something new, I guess. Is it the intention to clean up while you're building your site?
So what happened is there was treatment that was done when there was a spill. What happens going forward is they think that with the passage of time, that the level of the chemicals naturally dissipate in the groundwater. And there's been no evidence of any spread. And so the cleanup was done at the time, but it's not 100% cleaned up. So anything that Devereaux does here is gonna help that, because Devereaux will be responsible for monitoring it. So what happens now is what's called remedy operation status. Is it stays as is, and it's monitored yearly or twice a year to make sure that nothing is spreading and that there's nothing new. And that while that happens during that remedy operation status, it's what's called natural attenuation, and the environment cleans it up itself with time.
Okay, I guess perhaps I need to do a little more research and perhaps talk to my fire department.
And we'll be happy to talk to our LSP on this to explain it a little better. But I would say that by us taking over the site and adding the infiltration systems and the infiltration basins and doing significant stormwater and controls here, that's going to help the situation versus just leaving it as is.
No argument for me on that. I see this as a overall win, especially in the stormwater department. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. I don't vote, I don't make the recommendation, but I don't know where they are with feeling comfortable enough to recommend approval of your variance request. I think some more information, minimally the complete list of chemicals and how they're being stored and where on site would be important. And then we can, I could then feel more comfortable recommending that they make a recommendation to the ZBA if they choose to positively for the variance. I guess if Devereaux doesn't buy it, the property, is the current owner on the hook to finish this? Or is he allowed to just sit there as he has for many years and let it sit there and attenuate on its own?
Well, he's on the hook for it, but he can also let it attenuate on his own as well. So
DEP is not considering it a high enough hazard that they're going to go after him to make him fix it.
Correct.
But as a new owner, you would be responsible for fixing it.
Correct.
And that's, I assume, all negotiated into the sale of the property.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Well, I'll go out on a limb, Jason, and recommend that you continue the discussion to your next meeting, and that we get some information about the specifics on the quantities and the containment of the chemicals, and then maybe some more information about this, and I could maybe even follow up with DEP. But that's just my 2 cents, and clearly what the committee wants to do is their purview.
Yep. Thank you very much, Fred. I'm going to poll the committee members to see if they have any other requests for information that they would like to see. Bryant, do you have any other things you'd like to?
Not at this point. I think I agree with Fred that we should have some understanding of the current status of the cleanup. That what tier they're at. Sounds like they're tier 3 and monitoring and wait and see stage. But we should have some clarification of that. I think some documentation anyway, and the additional chemicals that will be used before we proceed.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Teresa, do you have any additional information you'd like to request?
No, that's enough for me. Thank you.
Okay. Anthony, any additional?
I would agree with Fred in terms of the chemicals. I would like to see, I think it'd be very useful to have a very thorough understanding about how the contamination, where it is in the process, and in terms of who's watching it, timelines, and what would happen should the application go forward.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. And Diane, any additional information you'd like to request?
Just a question on, is it Lamy Automotive there? Does any of their chemicals or whatever they might use, does that play into this anyway? You didn't discuss it, but just wondering.
I think in the past they received a use variance for their operation, so presumably there would have been conditions imposed at that time that they're observing.
That's correct. They were required to provide some containment of their chemicals stored within the building. They did add some drainage around their building alone. They were not responsible for the entire site. Again, I have to agree with Paul. I think that overall this could be a significant improvement for this entire site in terms of protecting groundwater. I just think you need to get enough information to feel comfortable recommending the variance, approving the variance, and then retaining some oversight of the site plan and getting a chance to verify all the site plan issues, the stormwater design, the operation and maintenance, the snow storage areas. Some more information about the cleanup would be nice, I think, before going to that next step. But I think overall, this could be a significant improvement, and that should be carefully considered when making the recommendation.
Thank you, Fred. So from my standpoint, I'm in agreement with what's been expressed previously. A comprehensive list of chemicals, perhaps even those that are anticipated to be used or uncertain, a conservative list that's more inclusive, and the way each of those is going to be stored and contained. Additional information about the current condition in the area of the proposed administrative building to understand what the issue is with the contamination is in the past history. Once again, I apologize for not being clear about this, but it seems to me there are two processes or two levels of review here potentially for this committee. One is, in some sense, the more narrowly scoped use variance relating to the maintenance operation, the accessory use. But then secondarily is the broader site plan level of review. Is it the case, Fred, that we would not normally participate in that, or we normally would because some of these other aspects around the perimeter of the property aren't as directly associated with the accessory use issue?
Let's say, for instance, there was no variance required. It wasn't a groundwater 1 area, it was all groundwater 3. There would be a special permit required for the operation of this business in the groundwater 3, a special permit. And then that's when you would look at the drainage and everything else. The way the variance works, depending on how it's ultimately worded, if it's granted by the ZBA, which is, not given, but if it were to be granted by the ZBA, it depends on how they word it. As the decision was made at 1 Lyman Street, it just gave them a variance to operate their business in a groundwater area and kind of excluded them from coming back to the groundwater committee for any kind of site plan review. What I'm suggesting is that if variance is recommended for approval, it could go with some conditions, and I recommend that you restrict the volume of material, and then you determine whether or not you want them to come back, so you get a chance to see all that. The planning board will see it as part of their site plan review, but if it's something that you want to participate in, and in this case, I think it might be appropriate, and the applicant has indicated they have no objection to that, simply because the site plan has not evolved to the point where they're just going to turn around and submit this as a site plan. It needs some work. The case at 1 Lyman Street, they had already designed the site. It had been before conservation. It was all ready to go. They got their use variance and they turned around and submitted almost the same exact plan for the site plan review. And so it wasn't as critical. I think in this case, it would be in your best interest to want to take a look at that. But again, depends on how the ZBA words the variance as to whether or not they would be required to come back. If the variance is just granted with no stipulation that they return, it wouldn't be required.
Okay, very good. Today is September 14th. Our normally scheduled meeting would be the second Tuesday, which in October would happen to be the day after Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, depending on your preference. So would that be the time frame that would work for members of the board? to continue consideration to that date?
Works for
Okay.
me.
Right.
Yeah,
Works for Bryant, works for Teresa,
yes.
Diane, yes, and Anthony?
Sorry, once again?
We would be looking to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be the second Tuesday in October, October 12th, to continue this, this issue.
Looks good.
Okay.
Just check with the applicant. That's not a problem for them.
No, I just want to, so I want to confirm, so we'll continue this, which means, so we're scheduled for the zoning board of appeals on the 28th. So would that mean I would continue that hearing until we get a recommendation from this committee?
Well, you beat me to it, but what I would do is ask the committee if they would like me to, well, what I would do is I would recommend, I would send a memo to the ZBA indicating that the committee met this evening. There were some outstanding issues that they'd like clarified and more information supplied to the committee. They plan to meet again on October 12th, and we could recommend that they continue the hearing, but that's not to say that, one, that they will. It's also not to say that you couldn't present your case to them as well, and at least bring them up to speed on what some of the issues are and get some feedback. That will be a public hearing, and there will be abutters at that meeting which are not present tonight. We are not required to because we're advisory committee. Depending on what the letter from the committee is, we'll talk about it in a minute. You could then opt to make a presentation to the ZBA and agree to the extension. They'll have to extend. Their next meeting would be the 4th Tuesday in October. Or you could ask them to vote regardless of what this committee recommends. I'm not necessarily sure I would encourage that, but you could do that. Or you could just send a letter that based on the groundwater committee meeting, you're gathering more information and you request that the ZBA continue their hearing and not make a presentation. Those are some options that are available to you at that point once this committee. Once they give me some direction on how to send the letter to the ZBA.
Is it possible for you guys to say, because what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, hey guys, this all looks good, especially with respect to just the variance, except we want to be really clear about, I wrote down 4 things, which is one subject. We want all the chemicals, the quantities, how they're stored and where they're stored. And the other one is just a little more clarification on documenting the existing spill and the fact that we'll do everything proper to maintain that and remediate and do whatever we have to do because we're assuming the responsibility so that at least the ZBA knows, hey, these guys are in favor, we just need more clarification. And if what we clarify is wrong, if all of a sudden we come up with 3,000 gallons of PCBs, then that gives you guys the ability to say, no way, we're done, you're out. So is there something that shows a little more positive? I've seen a lot of approvals with contingency. So if you say we recommend this contingent upon these 3 or 4 things, because there's nothing here that you've asked us for that we don't want to give you and would be happy to give you. It's just a matter of time. And I'm only doing it at the same time where if you say we recommend it contingent upon this, then you guys could write that. And at least the ZBA knows, hey, they're on board as long as they keep their word and comply with everything. Because again, and coming back to you, no problem at all, because we don't want to not come back or not do anything we're promising to do. We just don't want to drag it out months and months and months. Is if there's a way to make that happen, because there's nothing that you guys have asked for that, and Paula or Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, that we can't, won't, or don't want to do. They all make sense. Everything you asked for seems very fair and reasonable. So we're 100% on board. Is there a way to do it quicker where you say, we recommend they get the variance contingent upon these 5 things or whatever they happen to be, or 10 things? Is that possible?
I think through the discussion we've had this evening, I don't know that the board members are very comfortable voting a recommendation that we would provide to the
Okay.
ZBA in advance of having some of those questions answered and some of that information in front of us. I can check with the board members and see what their feeling is.
I was saying contingent upon them.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, okay.
Bryant, what's your feeling?
Good question. I think I would be comfortable with, I mean, it's, if they're willing to accept the role of the responsible party for the 21E issues, that puts them on the hook. So I'm just concerned about knowing exactly where they stand in that cleanup. So contingent upon that, that would be fine. And it'd be up to Fred, I think, on how confident he is about the materials stored on site. I agree that's important, but I think that can be easily addressed.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
I would entertain a contingent approval.
Okay. And again, this is focused on the accessory use variance aspect of this overall.
Yes, with the contingency that they would come back, or a request to the ZBA that they come back during the site plan process, just so we can see it.
Very good. Thank you. Teresa?
I would be inclined to agree with Bryant on that. I do think that we do need the information regarding the additional chemicals and you know, the related information for that. But I also do believe that Fred's probably got more knowledge and background on the overall effect of that information than we may. So I would look to him for some guidance in that regard. I would be willing to allow this with or contingent upon the receipt of that information and the 21E information as well. Although my understanding of 21E issues is, as Attorney Devereaux has indicated, which is once they own the site, this problem is theirs and they've got to deal with it as the new owners. So, you know, I don't think that while I'm concerned about the fact that there is a contamination area over there, the fact that it's been under DEP's eyes and under their watch for some time, and they've had probably some investigation and some rulings already issued on it, gives me a little bit more of a comfort based on what I know about the laws under 21E. So I'm not as concerned as maybe some others are in that regard. But I also think that this problem improves the groundwater overall. I mean, not problem, sorry, this project improves the groundwater overall. And, you know, our goal as the advisory committee is to make sure that that does in fact happen if it's possible. So I guess that's my long-winded answer to say, yes, I'd be willing to give it contingent approval.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Where did everybody go? I'm sorry, my video's shifting on me. Diane?
I too would go on contingent approval.
I'm sorry, you said you would be comfortable with that? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
Yeah.
And Anthony?
I, for one, would not be comfortable. I'm not comfortable with these kind of incremental approvals where they half get approved and then there's not all the information is available for the granting authority to make a decision. So I would be inclined to not do that.
Okay, thank you. I think I am of the mind that I'm comfortable with the isolated consideration of the maintenance area in groundwater 3, subject to the clarification of the hazardous materials in their storage. Contingent upon that, I am concerned about other aspects on this site, but for the purpose of the ZBA, their consideration, more narrowly confined to the accessory use aspect here, I think I would be okay with doing an approval of the accessory use proposal contingent upon the complete and comprehensive documentation of chemicals and storage. And I would add, along with that, some condition or recommendation that the applicant come back before this committee as part of the continuing process to review the broader aspects of the overall site and the other areas of the site that are of concern. Does anyone care to offer a motion? I'm sorry.
What you just said.
Well, I'm not sure what I just said. I expressed my opinion in terms of the language of a motion to recommend approval with conditions as would anyone care to offer a motion to recommend approval of the proposed use variance subject to the following conditions? One is that the applicant provides a complete comprehensive list of hazardous chemicals and the documentation of storage and containment for those. A condition that the applicant be recommended to come back before this board, assuming the use variance is granted, so that this committee has an opportunity to review other aspects of the overall site proposal. And Fred, can you suggest other conditions that
I can and will.
Overlooking with respect to the use variance? Yes.
Just want to get a little clarification because I now have to write this memo.
Right.
One is the approval with conditions, and the first condition being the comprehensive list of all chemicals and the methodology for containment. Is that to be supplied between now and September 28th so that it can be included, the volume can be included? Or is it just a condition that they supply that? What I was hoping for in the beginning was an actual number that we would say it shall not exceed, but it doesn't matter if it's 155 or 255, provided there's the adequate containment. So I'm not sure where you were going with your recommendation on that first condition.
In that regard, I don't have any metrics to suggest what would be a suitable limitation.
Okay.
So
we could well, we could just say they shall quantify, which is basically covered if we go to the next condition and say, instead of saying they return to the board, we just say they adhere to all requirements of a groundwater special permit as outlined in the bylaw under whatever it is, section 707 010 D2, whatever would be required in the groundwater 3, and that all chemicals be stored within the maintenance building as shown on this plan, and no chemicals to be stored within the administrative building as shown on the plan. That kind of pushes everything automatically into groundwater 3. And then the site plan issues are all addressed by saying that they still need the special permit. So even though they get a variance for the use, they still need the special permit for site plan as opposed to what happened at 1 Lyman Street, where they just got a variance and went directly to site plan review with the planning board and no return trip to groundwater. So we would require them to adhere to that section of the bylaw that requires, you know, the chemicals, the storage, the statement by a qualified expert that it won't impact the groundwater, all of those things that are normally required that were kind of bypassed by granting of the variance. While it was appropriate on 1 Lyman Street, I don't think it's appropriate here. So having them return to get that special permit, you're just basically saying the use is okay as long as it's all on the groundwater 3 portion of the lot, and then they get a special permit as if the whole property was in that groundwater 3 area, and list the chemicals, containment, impacts, drainage, all the stuff. So is that what you're trying to say?
I think that is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So then, I guess if you wanted your motion to read, recommend approval with of the variance, provided the following conditions are met, that all chemicals are properly quantified and contained within the maintenance building in groundwater 3. And then another condition that says they adhere to all of the requirements and obtain a special permit under groundwater section. I think it's listed in my memo. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
707010.d.
well, there's D, that's the requirements for submission. And then the next statement, number 10, is 707010D3C 4 and 5, which talks about the actual special permit that you need to get. So you would need to get those in accordance with that. And so it takes you off the hook from giving us the actual list of chemicals. You'll need to provide it later, but we're telling you that you have to provide, you know, appropriate containment for every ounce of chemicals, and that there's no, you know, there'll be more conditions at the special permit level as well. And then there would be another condition that says is the committee's concern about the 21E that it be completely resolved before taking on the rehab of the rest of the site, or can it be done in conjunction, or not quite? That's the part I'm not quite clear on how that works. I know that they're responsible, but whether they're responsible before they set up their operation, or, you know, 2 years down the road, how does that work?
I think through the chair, Fred, I think that the transfer of property, that's when you become the new responsible party. You're identified as the RP, and you're on the hook now.
Well,
I mean,
I get that.
Condition of the sale of the property.
I get that they're on the hook, but
and that's
the last owner was on the hook too, but he didn't do anything.
That's all my concern. I mean, that's all we could ask. I mean, we can't ask them to go beyond that.
No, I wouldn't be asking.
Everything Peter says.
I'm just looking for clarification as to when does the ultimate conclusion of that take place? I mean, is it immediately before they do anything else on the site, or is it because the last owner was responsible? He was on the hook because he owned the property, but he didn't do anything. And what kind of time frame is associated with that cleanup, completing that cleanup? And is that us or is that DEP?
Forever.
Well, there must be
Seriously,
some.
it could be many years.
Yeah, they could close it out. You could get a certificate that it's completed, but my concern was just making sure that transfer occurred. That was part of the deal to buy the property, that you inherited the applicant's willing to inherit the responsibility for the whatever.
I guess
Dario, could you please discontinue sharing? And I'll be able to see everybody's face here.
I I guess, Brian, that leads me to another point that we might want to address in the recommendation is that the variance be for this applicant only and not be granted to the property in general, so that in the event that Devereaux doesn't buy the property and doesn't become on the hook for the 21E cleanup, that the owner of the property doesn't get a pass on the variance. And I believe that the ZBA has the ability to limit that.
Yeah, the variance runs with the owner.
I think it has to be called out in the decision, but that would be part of the recommendation that the
Okay,
ZBA.
yeah. Okay.
Perhaps one of the attorneys could confirm that for me.
Confuse us more.
Well, maybe.
We don't have far to go.
I don't.
Teresa, you have something?
Thank you. So Fred, my understanding is that, as has been said, the problem runs with the owner / operator of the property. So right now, the current owner is on the hook for the problem. And if DEP believed that the owner was not doing something that it should be doing in terms of remediation, they would be stepping in and there'd be an enforcement action against the current owner. They must have done some remediation at some point to get to the status that they're at now. And DEP is probably comfortable with that status at this point. Once the property transfers ownership and the ownership and the operation goes over to Devereaux, they're going to be on the hook for it as well, and they'll need to comply with all of DEP. I don't know that the town has standing to enforce it. The best I think the town could do would be to let DEP know that there's an ongoing concern and that they should maybe reopen the file or look into it some more. And I'm sure Attorney Devereaux will tell me if I'm off base on that, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to have this obligation. But a lot of DEP sites never get clean. They get as clean as they can, but it's never 100% clean for a lot of these sites, and it is a very long ongoing process.
I understand that the monitoring wells are generally required for a very long time, and that they quite often require annual checks on the water testing to see that it is either resolved or going in the right direction, if you will. I just don't know if that's something that,
well, that's
it sounds like it doesn't need to be addressed in the variance, in that they're going to be on the hook, whether it takes a year or 10 years, they're on the hook to complete it. And it doesn't, and as long as we do our job in requiring containment of anything that goes on site, we're not making it any worse. We're not allowing them to make it any worse.
And where they're hiring a licensed site professional, he's supposed to be independent and report any violations to DEP. So that's a step in the right direction. Now, I mean, it sounds like they don't have the current owner may not have a licensed site professional overseeing it. So this is another plus if they buy the property and hire a licensed site professional. That's just a little level of comfort.
So maybe in addition to the conditions about complete list of chemicals and containment, everything being stored in the groundwater 3 portion of the site and the maintenance building, returning to the board to get a special permit under that section of the bylaw that we talked about. We could also request that their LSP submit a status report of the site at the time that they go for their special permit, so we know where we are, and then we could talk to DEP and confirm some things and make sure we're not going astray.
I think the applicant would want that.
I'm guessing the applicant may already have it or is in the works on getting it, and that generally the 21E comes out of the bank.
Right.
My understanding.
Right.
And I believe that these guys work in that field where contaminated sites are sometimes not uncommon.
Right.
That they're used to dealing with it, maybe not on their own property, but on someone else's. So I'm okay. I think that those 3 conditions, the chemicals, containment, return to the board or to require them to get a special permit under that section and follow all the guidelines of that, and then a status report of the 21E. If that is what the committee wants, I can write that letter to the ZBA if you would like to vote that.
Okay, thank you. Anthony?
We talked about snow removal, and I'd like to see if we can put a condition on it only using sand as treatment.
Jason, if it's okay with you, we could do that. And I think that that's one of those site plan issues that would come up as part of the,
Okay.
operation and maintenance plan. You give them a
Yeah.
chance to submit their O&M, indicating that sand is all that could be used, and then we would approve it with that O&M plan. And we may also, and part of the O&M plan would be sweeping of the parking lot, whether it's a vacuum sweeper or something else. Those are all site plan issues that we would address at that time, but it could be put in now if you like.
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to clarify here in this particular decision. The concern is a variance for the accessory use. The accessory use is permitted in groundwater 3. The applicant is constructing their design to locate that activity in groundwater 3. And the wrinkle of this is that the vehicles that are being serviced will be parked in or will cross through groundwater 1 in and out of the maintenance building where the activity is being conducted. So I don't disagree, Anthony, with some of the conditions you're concerned about, but I guess I wonder, do they bear directly on this particular concern in this recommendation, or are they more broadly apply to the entire site and would come under consideration during the site plan review?
I'm guessing that would be site plan. But again, this is why I'm not very in favor of doing these incremental recommendations, because there's just too many moving parts and things are going to get missed behind or left behind. So,
okay. Would you prefer to add that condition to this recommendation, or?
I can wait to the site plan, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Any other concerns, requests, comments by the committee members? Okay, I think we've had a statement of a motion to recommend approval with conditions, and the conditions were just enumerated by Fred. And did we have 3 conditions, Fred?
I have 3 in my notes. Want to go over them again?
Once more, please. Yeah.
The first condition would be a complete list of all chemicals and the methodology for appropriate containment. Actually, I have 4. Then that all chemical storage be within the maintenance building, which is located outside the groundwater 1 area on the property, as shown on plan submitted. The third comment would be the returning to the Groundwater Advisory Committee and adhering to the process required by receiving a special permit for the project under 707-010 D3 C3 and 5, which talks about the requirements of the special permit. And then the last one being a status report by a licensed site professional on the 21E cleanup going on the property currently and obligated by the new owner. And do we need to recommend to the ZBA that the variance be to this applicant only and not to the site?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Fred, could you just, sorry to further delay things, could you just clarify the volumes of hazardous chemicals? We weren't specifying a specific number. We weren't.
You could put a ceiling on it, but since I think the list of chemicals that they submitted may not be complete and that they may want the flexibility to add some more, which I would be okay with as long as there's proper containment for whatever is added to the list. But if the committee would feel more comfortable with a limit on the total amount of volume, I don't know what that number would be. Again, my opinion is as long as it's in a proper containment and there's no floor drains, and which would be a site plan issue, and it can't spill out into the parking lot, and then as long as all the chemicals are stored within that groundwater 3 area and all the chemicals are listed and they're in the special permit that's issued ultimately, if it is, and they're in proper containment, whether there's 100 gallons or 200 gallons or 500 gallons, I think might not be relevant. But if the committee would feel more comfortable with a upper limit that is acceptable, then that could be put in there as well. Right now, I think I didn't tally it up, but there was a list on there. But again, I think if they were to think about it, they might come up with a few more chemicals, whether they're in small containers or not, that would add to that volume. And if you require a variance to be a stop at 155 gallons, and then they need 5 gallons of windshield washer fluid or something that wasn't thought of today, but could be explored by going through the special permit site plan process, then they might have to come back and ask for an amendment to the variance, which could be potentially a little bit silly. But if there's an upper limit on the number that the committee wants, I'll put that in the letter.
Any proposals by committee members?
Let's not overthink this.
I agree. Let's not overthink this. They've got to contain whatever it is they have on site, and they're not going to make it so that they've got, 10,000 gallons of something, because it's going to take up all their workspace to contain it. So I don't think we need to.
My guess is that list is not going to expand significantly in terms of volume. But if they think about it, they may come up with a few more things that they didn't think of initially, because the list really just contained oil, which I'm sure was the bulk of what they thought you would be concerned about. But knowing that there'll be a hard and fast limit on what can be allowed, and that we will have a chance to review it and perhaps reduce that amount if you're uncomfortable with it at the special permit level, I think that gives you the assurance you need to go forward. But again, it's up to you.
That's fine. I think I'm satisfied. Any final comments, questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion from a board member?
Can I make a motion to recommend approval consistent with Fred's outline of the conditions?
I'm sorry, you had a burst of activity on your volume control there, Teresa. Could you repeat, please?
Oh, sorry. Can I make a motion to recommend approval contingent upon the 5 items set forth in Fred's list of conditions?
Yes. I have a motion from Teresa Capobianco. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second.
I have a second from Diane Goldner. This is a roll call vote. Diane?
Yes.
Bryant?
Yes.
Anthony?
No.
Teresa?
Yes.
And I, Jason Perot, vote yes. So we have a recommendation to approve with conditions. And I suppose you remain on schedule for the ZBA meeting later this month.
All right, thank you, and we will be back.
Okay, very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
The next item of business is review and approve minutes of May 12th, 2021. You had a copy of those minutes submitted in your packets. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th, 2021.
Second.
And I have a motion from Teresa Capobianco, a second from Brian Furman. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Diane?
Yes.
Bryant?
Yes.
Anthony?
Abstain?
Teresa?
Yes.
And I, Jason Perot, vote yes. And additionally, we had emailed to us the minutes for the Groundwater Advisory Committee, April 13th to 2021 meeting. We would have considered those at the May 12th meeting, but I think there was a mail delivery issue with the packets for some members. They didn't receive a copy of the minutes for that meeting. They didn't receive a copy of the April 13 minutes when we considered at the May 12th meeting. So now we have the April 13th minutes. And I entertain a motion to approve.
I wasn't there, so I can't make the motion.
Right. Do I have a motion from Diane or Bryant?
Motion to approve the minutes of April 12th meeting,
April 13th.
April 13th meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion by Brian Furman, second by Diane Goldner. This is a roll call vote. Diane,
Yes.
Bryant,
Yes.
Anthony,
Abstain?
Teresa,
Okay.
and I, Jason Pro, vote yes. So the minutes of April 13th are approved, 3 in favor and 2 abstentions. Next meeting date, October 12th, 2021. That's a Tuesday following Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. I think as we considered earlier, that seems to be a fine date for everybody, assuming there is business to conduct. Fred?
I do not know of any applications at this point, but the deadline for filing with the ZBA is not for another week or two. So hopefully I will know. As soon as I do, I will confirm. I would ask that you all keep the second Tuesday of the month on your agenda. It's getting increasingly hard to schedule other Zoom meetings on other nights with a lack of hosts and the fact that you're all on different boards and committees. It was beneficial to us tonight because Teresa's Board of Health meeting was canceled, so we were able to start at 6. Otherwise, in the future, we may consider starting a little bit later so that you can attend both on the same night.
Okay, very good. If there's no other business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
That was
And a
fast.
second.
Second.
Moved by Teresa Capobianco, seconded by Diane Goldner. Roll call vote. Diane,
Yes.
Bryant,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
and I, Jason Perot, vote yes. So motion to adjourn carries. So we are concluded. Thank you all very much this evening, and we'll see you at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thank you all.
Thank you, Fred.